quadratics and calculate vertex and solve x-intercepts. I want you to write it like that because when you're doing the homework, when you're doing a problem and you need to remember how we did this, well, then you'll just look back. You'll be like, oh yeah, here's how we calculated vertex. Here's how we solved the x-intercepts. Because a lot of times with quadratics, you don't need to graph them. You don't want to know the whole graph and the whole shape. You just want to know either the maximum or the minimum, which is a vertex, or the beginning and end, which is usually an x-intercept. So let's find the vertex. And like I said, this part might be a little bit of review. We've been doing this kind of already. Let's say we have y equals x squared minus 2x minus 8. So I know it's a parabola shape because it has an x squared. I know that it's going to open up. It's going to be shifted to the right. It's going to have a negative 8 y-intercept. Well, what I don't know is the vertex. And maybe that's all I care about. Well, when you find it, the first step is to find out the LOS. The axis of symmetry always lines up with the vertex. Always. They're always together. So if you can find the LOS, you can find the vertex. And the LOS is that formula. It's the negative b over 2a. So my b is negative 2. So this is going to be negative 2 over 2 times a, and a is 1. That's my line of symmetry. So that is 2 divided by 2, which is just 1. And line of symmetry is always x equals 1. That's the line that's dividing the parabola in half. That's when the vertex happens. When x is 1, you're also at the vertex if you're on the parabola. So for step 2, we want to find out where are we at on the y's when x is 1. And to do that, you just substitute in the 1. You plug it in. You plug it into the equation we had before. So instead of writing the equation, I'm going to put in 1 for my x. So it's going to be y equals 1 squared minus 2 times 1 minus 8. If we solve this, it's going to tell us what is the y value on the parabola when we're on the line of symmetry. And that's what a vertex is. So 1 squared is 1. This is going to be 1 minus 2 minus 8. So 1 take away 2, take away 8 more would be negative 9. Now, the last step, the third step, is we have to put them together. The vertex, and we label it vertex, the vertex is at 1, negative 9. And like I said, if you're working like with the Seattle Seahawks, that might be the only thing you care about. Is, hey, this is when they might get their peak. And after that, they're not going to be as good. So you'd say, okay, well, there's my vertex. 1, negative 9. Kind of nice, right? I think it's easier than graphing it. You just solve it. All right, let's try one together. You'll tell me how to do it. Y equals x squared plus 5x plus 6. We want to find the vertex. And you're going to do this in your homework, actually. On your homework, you're going to have some problems. It's going to say find the vertex. So someone in person, tell me, what do we do first? What's your first step? What are you going to do? Okay, go ahead. Find the LOS, right? That's where we always start. Good. So the LOS is negative b, so negative 5, over 2 times a, which is 1. Oh, it's -5/2. Okay, here's a tip for you. Whenever you have the option to do like a fraction or a decimal, go with a decimal. Okay, it's going to be easier to plug it into a calculator. It's easier to use a -2.5 than it is to like leave it as a fraction. So my tip to you is use decimals. So, oh, I have to remember I need to write x is -2.5. That's your line of symmetry. Good. Someone online, tell me, what do we do second?
Plug it in for x.
Plug it in for x. Nice. Yep. Thank you. So instead of x squared, I'm going to have y equals, this is going to be -2.5 squared plus 5 times -2.5 plus a 6 on the end. This is where calculators are going to be super useful. And this is why decimals are better than fractions when you're doing with these. So let's see what the calculator says. Negative squared, I know it's going to be a positive number. So I just need to figure out what a 2.5 squared is. This is going to be 6.25. A positive times a negative is going to be a negative. So this is going to be -12.5 and the 6 on the end. And then when I get to this point, I just like to put all those in my calculator and then find out what it says it is. 6.25 minus 12.5 plus 6. Negative 0.25. Okay, anybody, tell me what the third step is. What else do we need to do next?
Find the vertex.
Put the two parts together.
Yep, find the vertex, and the way you do that is you put the parts together and you label it. The vertex is -2.5 and -0.25. Boy, that one would be messy to graph. Trying to graph like a half and a -4th, that would be kind of messy, but we don't need to graph it. We just need to solve it. There you go. Now, there could be something kind of different that could happen. Let me give you an example of something a little bit different. Let's say we had -10 plus y equals x squared plus 10x plus 6. So if we were trying to find the vertex, we know it's a quadratic because it has an x squared, but this is weird because it has a -10 on the left side. You know what you want to do? We
Move
want
it to the right side.
Yeah, move it to the right side. That's it. You just want it in standard form. Okay. So I would add 10. Now it gets a little tricky sometimes because over here you have to figure out what am I adding 10 to? Well, the 10 is just a number, so it's going to add to the 6. We get y equals x squared plus 10x plus 16. Now it's set up and you could go through all the steps we did before, right? If this was a -10x over here, like there's an x after it, well, then when you add 10x, you would actually add it to the middle term because they're alike. Or if this was an x squared over here, you would combine it with this x squared because they're alike. Okay, so no matter how crazy it starts to look, just make it standard form because then you can solve it. I want you to go ahead and solve this one and let's see if we get the same answer in the end. I'll give you a little bit of time right now. Go ahead and find your vertex. So step 1 is the LOS, negative b over 2a. So negative 10 over 2 in this case. So our LOS is at negative 5. Step 2, plug it in. So it's going to be negative 5 squared plus 10 times negative 5 plus 16. So it's going to be 25 minus 50 plus 16. Calculator, please help me. What do we get? We get negative 9. And then the third step is to put them together. The vertex is at negative 5, negative 9. Flipped upside down too. So when we're doing x-intercepts, which is the other part of our purpose today, is you might have 2, you might have 1, you might have none. It just depends on what parabola you're looking at, okay? All of them happen when y is 0. So let's take a look at an example. Oh wait, I want to talk about this a little bit first. Another name for this is called finding a root. I have no idea why they use the word root. If we're finding our roots, it means we're finding the x-intercepts. Okay, same thing. Or sometimes they call it solving. It says like solve an equation. You're solving for the x-intercepts. We already know how to graph it. And so what we're doing is we're saying, hey, what happens when y is 0? And so in this example, if you wanted to find your roots, you just look at the graph. You would say, you know what? I have 2 x-intercepts. One of them's over here. The other one's over here. So my roots are negative 2, 0, and 4, 0. They're ordered pairs because they're the x-intercepts. So the roots are just where they cross. But let's talk about what if you wanted to not graph it? What if you just wanted to solve it on its own? Well, there's a nice way to be able to do that. And for that, we're going to put it in our notes, because if you get stuck on the homework, I want you to be able to look back and see how we did it. So for this part, we're going to just call this find, and I'm going to abbreviate it to just x-ins. Find the x-intercepts. Let's say we had y equals x squared minus 2x minus 8. Well, we know it's either going to have 2 answers, 1 answer, or no answers. And I know that this is going to be opening up. I know it's shifted to the right. I know the y-intercept is negative 8. So I'm thinking it's probably going to have 2 x-intercepts, because it sounds like it's kind of shifted down and to the right. So the first step to finding an x-intercept is make y 0. We want to know what happens when y is 0, because that's when the x-intercepts happen. So I'm going to rewrite my equation, but I'm going to write 0 equals x squared minus 2x minus 8. Now it's just algebra. We just need to solve for x. And how do you solve for x? Is you get it all by itself. But there's a problem. If I try to get x by itself, I would get stuck, because I would add 8 to both sides. And then I have an x squared and a 2x, and I can't combine them. So like I could move the 2x to the other side, but then I have an 8 and an x over there, and then I have an x squared, and you kind of get stuck. So for the second step, instead of trying to do a bunch of inverse operations, which are going to get me nowhere, instead what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of think a little bit. I'm going to say, hey, how did they make this quadratic? And when we do that, we call it factoring. So step 2 in finding an x-intercept is to always factor. So what I'm going to do is, instead of trying to do inverse operations, I'm going to ask myself, how did they make this? And I know they made it by multiplying two things together. Remember, we did this before a while back. We factored polynomials. I want to figure out what factors of -8 are going to add to be -2. If I figure that out, then I can figure out what they multiplied to make their polynomial. So you just start listing the factors. Maybe 1 times -8. No. 2 times -4. There you go. 2 times -4 makes -8, but adds to -2. So that means they had a +2 and a -4. And the only way to get x squared is x times itself. So they must have multiplied these two things together to get that quadratic. Okay, so what we did is we just kind of broke it apart. That's the most important step right there. Hopefully that makes sense to you. Actually, this thing that comes, this third step we're going to do is also a very important one. I'd say step 2 and step 3 are probably the most important. Think about what this means. It means something here times something here have to equal 0. How do you multiply two things and get a 0? Yeah. Yeah, so one of them has to be 0. Either this has to be a 0 or this has to be a 0, because when you multiply it has to equal 0. So what we do then is we do this thing I like to call a split. We split these apart. We say, well, what if the x plus 2 was 0? Well, we'd write it like this. 0 is x plus 2. But then we say, but what if the other one was 0? Well, you'd write 0 equals x minus 4. What we're doing is we're solving both of them separately. Now we can do inverse operations. Let me subtract 2 from both sides. I get -2 equals x. Over here, I add 4 to both sides. So I get 4 equals x. So to get our thing to equal 0, our polynomial, we either need a -2 or we need a 4, or if they're both 0, that works too. But we need one of those. And what those are actually the x-intercepts, because that's what x is when y is 0. So the fourth step is to show the solution. And we write it like this. My x is -2 when y is 0. Or your x is 4 when y is 0. Those are the x-intercepts. And so that would be my answer right there. -2, 0, or 4, 0. Is that kind of cool how that works? Maybe that's the beginning and end value of whatever science experiment you were doing. So your homework, it's going to give you 3 problems. You're going to find the vertex and find the x-intercepts for each one. All right, let's try another one here. Y equals x squared plus 5x plus 6. Someone online, tell us what to do first.
Make y 0.
Thank you. So 0 equals x squared plus 5x plus 6. Someone in person, tell us what to do next. Okay. Yep, you're gonna factor. You want the factors of 6 that add to 5. And we know it's gonna look like that with parentheses. Okay, anybody know what it is already? One, got that. Or 2 and 3. 2 and 3. 2 and 3, they add to make 5. Good. So this is the x plus 2. This is the x plus 3. I'm not doing the area model with like the rectangle, but if you want to, you could always do that. Help you find your factors. Doesn't matter as long as you're able to break them apart. Someone online, tell us what to do next.
Split the equation.
Split. You like this teamwork we have going? People in person, people online, going back and forth. So we either say the 0 equals x plus 2, or the 0 is going to equal x plus 3. And then we solve. So minus 2 minus 2. So x might be negative 2. Or when we subtract 3, x might be negative 3. So there's 2 common mistakes algebra students make. One is after they factor it, they try to jump right to the answer. Like on this one, they might say, oh, the answer is 2 and 3. Notice they're close, but not quite right. Okay, so make sure you go through the steps. The answer isn't 2 and 3. The answer actually ends up being the opposite of that. Okay, the other mistake algebra students make is they don't do this last step. You have to tell us your answer. You have to say the x-intercepts. What are they? Well, negative 2, 0, or negative 3, 0. The order doesn't matter. If you want to do the negative 3, 0 first and the negative 2, 0, that's fine. If we had a quiz on this, the order doesn't matter. If you're talking to your math teacher, the order doesn't matter. Okay. Hopefully you're feeling pretty good about those. Let's see how we're doing on time. Yes, okay. I want to show you another thing to consider. Let's put away the notes for a second. Okay, so we talked about using the graph for the roots. I showed you the algebraic way to find a root. They talk us through the same thing here, but you have it in your notes. So that's good. We did this one. But what if this? Think about this one for a second. There's 2 things different here. What are the 2 things that are different? You see both of them?
Instead of y, there's a negative 10.
Yeah. And actually, I guess that's both things. There's no y, and instead there's a negative 10. So what would you do? Well, it's like the one we did with the vertex. Move the 10 to the other side. Okay, so add 10. And then you don't have to do the first step. You don't have to make y 0 because there is no y. It's already set equal to 0. Okay, so if you move the 10, then you would just solve. So let's put something like this in our notes. Let's try a different one. Let's try this one. We have 12 equals x squared minus 6x minus 4. We're finding the roots. What would you do first? Yep. And since it equals 0, then you're already ready to solve. So everyone go ahead and solve that, and then we'll see if we get the same answer for our roots. And it's the same thing as before. If there was an x over there, well, we combine it with the x's on the other side. If it was an x squared, we combine it with the x squared on the other side. But now we're good. Now it's in standard form. So you're on to factoring. I'll give you a little bit of time and we'll compare and see if we get the same answer. I know some people are wondering, remember, you're finding the factors of negative 16 that are going to add to negative 6. They are out there. So have to think through it. I think you should use probably what, a -8 and a +2. They multiply to make negative 16 divided make -6. So we have x minus 8, x plus 2, and you split and solve. So x is either 8 or x is -2. So the roots are 8, 0 or -2, 0.
What if you did it the other way? Like instead of saying -8 times 2, you said -2 times 8.
That would still be fine. Absolutely correct. Oh wait, -2 times +8? No, -2 times +8 would add to make +6. So sorry, that won't work. The minus has to be with the 8. You could switch them around in here. You could write x plus 2 times x minus 8. That'd be okay. But because that b term's -6, your larger number here has to be negative. Yeah, good catch. I hadn't thought about that. Yeah, make sure that negative is with the 8. Right. There's one more kind of weird one to think about.